Welcome
Should I go
back
change
to
my
the
shirt?
Disrupt Education Podcast. There we go. Yes, we are continuing. We are still. It's amazing. This week we're wearing the exact same things we were wearing last week. Allie, Dahl, we have Jason Van Nuss with us. Jason, man, too much
Thank you. Guys are kind.
amazing information.
This is like a Seinfeld episode where,
But
hey, look, your audience just caught us at the end of a laundry cycle. That's all it was.
exactly.
We just the end of laundry, and we just wore the same shirt the next week. That's all it
If I
was.
could figure out how to edit these backwards, 10 minutes ago, so.
Man, I
But
just
jump
okay.
in, Allie. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you haven't listened to last week's, go back into last week's, and trust me, stretch your hand out if you're writing notes. You should be. Yeah,
give
Allie,
me
open up with your question. What do you got?
well, okay. Let's set the stage just a little bit for people because in case you
Sure.
just decided to start part two before part one. Okay, we have the amazing Jason on here. We decided spontaneously. I decided actually just basically put Jason on the spot and be like, actually, let's just our episode time that we usually shoot for our listeners
Hmm.
is 30, 45, maybe an hour. But I'm like, I haven't even dug into any of my questions, like other questions that I have for you. And I'm like, we're mindful of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Jason said, whether
I'm
he
good.
liked it or not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he was like, I got nowhere to be. I have nowhere to
Yeah.
be. So I was like, let's
Let's
just
do
cut
it.
this up and
Yeah.
keep going. So, welcome to part two of the impromptu part two.
Some people were
Um,
waiting for this. They were like, no, 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 no. I can just hear it. But now you're here. So
Now you're here. We get it right away. You had to wait a week. So okay, you just finished talking about on the last episode this. I mean, I can't even explain how disruptive it is, but like, why did no one think of this?
Mm.
And I will say, you said that you have a plug and play. You're putting it out there for people to
Mhm.
like use. I love
Yeah.
that. It's one of the best things about educators.
Mhm.
The ones I love working with they're so willing to share
Yeah.
hmm
resources,
hmm
Mhm.
and those are the best environments to be in. Like if I lived in Georgia, I know where I would move.
Well,
Like,
thank
and
you.
the weather for skydiving, like you're really
Yeah.
selling like a whole lot of things.
Ellie's gonna
Right?
be
Hey,
looking to
we're
real
close
estate
to
here.
we're two hours in three directions, and you're at the beach.
Well,
I know. And you're
So,
close to some drop zones that I actually really love in Florida. So,
mhm.
like, yeah, well, maybe we'll be talking. But I'm really also interested, like, in I kind of want to dive into you
Well,
had
can I
to
pause 1 second?
yeah, yeah,
I want to
yeah,
say one thing about the reverse career for that. I
yeah.
mentioned it's plug and play.
mhm.
I did it in a work-based learning environment, which is different because all of my kids have different backgrounds, right? And so if someone in your and so this is disrupt education. So someone listening may not be like into work-based learning or they may not be in that background. This model is super efficient for work-based learning. It would even be more efficient if you did it per content area. So imagine doing this in a healthcare class where your seniors are the ones who build their booth and you only invite healthcare people.
Mhm.
Now it becomes both simultaneously an exposure event, a social capital event, which is what it's designed to be, was social capital, but it also becomes a pretty unique opportunity for it to be a hiring event because you've got healthcare students and your advisory board and healthcare people at the same event. Where that's a little bit of a stretch in my event because I may have a welder who is being interviewed or being networking with someone who owns an educational company or someone who's the director of a chamber. And so it is uniquely positioned to be successful in work-based learning because that's the content we do, but it's also really effective if you were to launch it in any one of the CTE pathways as a capstone event or graduating event. So I
Yeah.
want to get that out there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the tie to last episode, and I'm eager to hear your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I love that because for somebody listening who's like, I don't, this isn't my area, you just removed that barrier.
Yeah.
The way your brain sees things is different. I want to acknowledge that to listeners, like you're such a resource
Well, thank you.
and it it's really coming across in an amazing way. And I think where I want to kind of kick off this second part is I'm sure you faced some challenges. Like not everyone's been on board. Like yes, you've grown
Mhm.
this program, but we've chatted some about like Disrupt Education as a podcast name doesn't always, like not it's not for everyone, so to speak. They just are turned off by it for just the name of it.
Yeah.
They haven't really like kind of dug in. And some of the work you're doing is disruptive. You even label yourself as a gentle disruptor. You've had some pushback with that.
Yeah.
Like I know our listeners want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think education, especially inside the staff of a school, can be, I think it's designed to be a safe space, because we share so many struggles. We share so many obstacles in common. It's the underappreciation from people in industry. It's the underappreciation of the job and its difficulty from parents. You've seen that cartoon where 30 years ago, it's a parent-teacher conference and the parents like yelling at the kid. And it says now it's like the parents yelling at the teacher. It's like, it's your fault. It's your fault. And so I think education is a safe space. And I think we have these practices, and I think they're adapted practices or things that we say are best practice, right? Um, and I think anytime someone comes in and begins to question that, and not and this is important to understand, is I use the term gentle disruptor because I try to be gentle. Sometimes I'm not really good at being gentle. Sometimes I'm just kind of the bull in the china shop, and I'm like, that's a terrible way to do this. And so I know I can come across as a jerk sometimes, and I promise you, like I try really, really hard to be fair and equitable and gentle and humble. Um, but sometimes um I've heard, I grew up again in South Georgia, so I've heard this before. South Georgia, religion and church is a big deal, right? And as a person of faith, I don't really care what you think the Bible says. I kind of want to know, what does the Bible say? Does that make sense? I don't want to know. I don't care what you think. Like, what does it say? And so a lot of I've heard people say this, and this is kind of my motto in education: if I step on your toes, sit higher in the pew. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like my goal is never to offend anybody, but if what I'm saying makes sense in terms of application, but the newness of it is offensive, then I would say then I'm not the problem. Like you can't be an educator and not be a lifelong learner, right? You have to be that. And so sometimes, and I don't remember if we talked about this on the front on the first episode or not, but um did we talk about the sacred cows in the first episode? I know we talked about it in the
Off
preamble.
off air. No,
Yeah,
Yeah, in the
bring
off
up
air.
preamble.
Yeah.
sacred cows.
So this is kind of what it comes like. You have a lot of teachers in school systems and programs and departments who have these what I call sacred cows. And I want to make sure, like I say, I call like I learned this from a book. It's not even in production anymore. But I looked it up today just to make sure if anybody in your audience wants it. It's a really unique book, and if you know, I'm weird, so this book really fits my mentality. It says, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the kids, and that's the name of the book. And in that book, she talks about sacred cows and the value of a sacred, like you're holding on to something just because it's been done in the past. How many times have you heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Peter, we can't do that. It's not how we do it here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, then I don't know what to tell you. Like if that, then you don't want to change. Like, so what's the best thing to do with a sacred cow that no one wants to get rid of, right? What's the best thing to do? And it's have a barbecue. And I've even had that mentality of, like if when I ever become a director of career tech or a CEO of a career academy, which is my dream job. So if anybody out there has a career academy, look me up. I'd love to come talk with you. But like when you sunset a program, right? And so when you're going in and you're saying, look, we're going to this goes back to the part of the first episode of return on investment in talent. Like if a school system is producing talent for an industry that doesn't exist in your community, you're using your community's tax dollars to develop talent for your surrounding communities to hire, right? So there's no way to retain them here. And that's what I would call a sacred cow. And when you sunset a program, I want to be really sensitive. I understand that there's someone on the back end, there's a teacher on the back end of that, right?
Hmm.
Um, but but we need to make sure that we're being good stewards of our school's resources, our tax base's resources, and producing talent that our local community can consume or can hire and can retain. Um, and sometimes, like if you have to sunset a program, I've even had the thought, like when I'm a CEO, like we're going to legitimately have a barbecue. Like we're going to have hamburgers. We're going to celebrate this pathway was great. It served us, but it's time to move on. And we're slaughtering the cow. We're putting them on the grill. Here's steaks and hamburgers. And here's a new pathway coming next week. And I mean, just having that mentality because it's so visceral. But it's what happens. You have some, I mean, how many teachers do you know who teach that unit that was so good 20 years ago and it's their favorite unit, but it's not even in their standards anymore, but they don't want to let go of it, right? It's like, no, let's have a barbecue and let's move
Hmm.
on, right? And so that's that kind of mentality of being that disruptor, but sometimes people they don't like being disrupted. They don't
Hmm.
like I mentioned earlier like that scratchy, that itchy feeling. Like I like that because that tells me I'm in an uncomfortable area. I'm about to learn something new. So
Hmm.
think about like anytime you're uncomfortable, it's like people focus on the discomfort. I try to focus on, okay, I'm uncomfortable. Like, what can I learn? Like, what am I about to learn? I'm on the precipice of gaining knowledge somewhere.
Hmm.
But the people who don't like being disrupted are the ones saying, "Oh, I don't like this. Let me retreat to my comfort zone." And they're stuck in myopia and they're stuck in ineffective practice. And that's why you have an American educational system that is where it is right now.
Hmm.
And it's CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional practitioners who don't want to even entertain
Hmm.
moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Yeah. I know you have more questions, Ali, so I don't want to go too far into this, but I do want to let you, like, I see right now VHS tapes and DVD discs in schools,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And the good question, the question is like, why are these kids, they don't even like watch segments of videos anymore, right? Like, and people
yeah,
still do it. That's
yeah,
total sacred cow. By the way, I'm
yeah,
hungry now because, I kind of
yeah.
want to eat a cow. Love that. Um, Allie, go on. Like, I know you got a bunch of your questions your line is great, so I want to just continue with that.
I mean, so how do we how do we address, being disruptive to, like I'm just thinking, okay, like sometimes I meet people and I'm like they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, one of the cool things I do is I'm
Yeah.
a podcast host for the Disrupt Education podcast, and they have like a reaction to it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, you know,
It's like you're some kind of
what
anarchist.
I know
Like,
they do. Right, but they
yeah,
also know I was like, in a traditional school
Yep.
teaching
yeah,
high school chemistry. So I think there's this like both and Peter uses
Yeah.
that, phrase a
Well,
lot.
hmm
but if I can interject here real quick, like I get a lot, like most of our comments that I see are, and I'm not really on, I'll check TikTok here and there, but we're on it and we put our shorts on it, and there's a lot of anger in this, like a lot of angry. School sucks. It'll never da 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 da, which is
Mhm.
interesting as well. So I just kind of want to throw
yeah,
that in there too.
Okay, so what's the opportunity and how do we, you know, have conversations? It's local, it's dynamic. It is, I think, you talk about like efficiency and data and replicating yourself. So, like, what's the opportunity for those who want to be disruptive to
hmm
approach this, if you're an educator, right? You're in the system. This series is all about people in the system doing the work, setting fire to traditional models in whatever ways. But like, how do we have those conversations? What would you
yeah,
say is the opportunity to have them move the needle forward?
yeah. So again, that's why I'm very conscious of saying that I try to be a gentle disruptor because disruption is the ultimate goal, right?
Mhm.
But um, I'll say this: if you want to be a disruptor just because you're contrarian and you don't like being submissive, then you're not a disruptor. You're a derelict. Okay, so let's get that out of the point. Like
Mhm.
like if people who want to be disruptive just because they want the attention or just because they want to be contrarian or because they have authority problems, that's not a disruptor. That's someone who is just a bad employee. So, so it's okay to be disruptive within the confines of how your system works, right? And you do that, the one way you do that is by engendering and creating goodwill with your bosses and the people who make your job possible. So when you go to them and you have an idea, one, I think it's okay to complain, right? I think it's okay to say, look, I don't like this.
Hmm.
But I do not like working with people who complain, but also don't provide solutions. So if you're going to complain, have a solution, right? So if it's like, hey, why are we doing this paper-based application? Like this is stupid. It's so in effect, like blah blah blah. Okay, great. Like let's stop the negativity because that's not disruption. How can we fix that, right? And so people really, it's a little bit more easy to take someone who's a disruptor if they come and say, here's a problem, can I help solve it? But where it really, what it tends to happen with school is, Peter, you're my boss. And I say, Peter, this is a terrible program. You should fix that. And then I run back to my classroom and I'm waiting you to knock on my door and bring me the solution, right? Like it's okay to do something that's not in your job description if it's for the betterment of your students, if it's for the betterment of your program. So that's one way I would say do it. It's okay, like be gentle. Sometimes these conversations push into emotion and you're not so gentle. I just had one with someone the other day. They're trying to force a square peg into a round hole with some professional development for CTE, and they're trying to make it just like academics, right? And I had this conversation with them, and I even went back and told him, I said, "Man, I'm sorry, I was probably a little emotional there." But I'll also you got to be transparent and say, I don't. I'll apologize when I'm emotional, but I'll be more apologetic if I don't care about what I do.
Mm.
So if I can just swallow that pill and just do it. So there's a balance. Like you want to be submissive and a really good employee, but you have to engender goodwill and trust from the people who are listening to you be disruptive.
Mhm.
Because if it ever comes across that you're being disruptive just because you don't like authority, then you're going to go nowhere. You're going to get no buy-in. You're going to fight people all the time. And so
Mhm.
that's probably what I try to focus on. And that means working with people. Sometimes it means playing the beta and letting the alpha be the alpha. So and honestly, kind of I'll say this. And this is not my principles. They're all amazing, okay? But sometimes you have to stroke someone's ego and let them think it's their idea. Sometimes you have to plant the idea and let them think they came up with it.
Yeah.
And the people who have a problem doing that are the people who want the attention.
Mhm.
So if the goal is the outcome of the disruption, then you should have no problem planting the seed and letting somebody else think it was their idea. But the people who don't want to do that aren't in it for the goal of the disruption. They're in it for the attention and the this was my idea. Everybody loved me. And that I don't have patience for that. Like, I mean, I think schools are already full of people who who have that mentality. Like we don't
Mhm.
need more of those people. We need people who are willing to serve, bring up solutions, and just do it for the sake of the outcome of the disruption, not for the attention itself.
I've always lived by that concept of if you do bring a problem, bring two solutions. I think that was an
Yeah.
Obama quote somewhere, right?
Mhm.
That legitimately is something that when you start to change and you work with teams that do that, it's amazing. It really is. Yeah, I'm gonna stand here and say like I was that disruptor for a moment and for a while. I mean, there was ego with me and because I was just I was so emotional and not just with one
Yeah.
conversation, Jason. It was for a
Mhm.
while, a couple of years and you get so angry about how you're attached to the work and then you figure out
Mhm.
how to play the game with it, right?
Mhm.
I love the way that you put that because it is like you're going to hit your head. And I
Yeah.
failed at what I was doing at the beginning of this whole piece.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what you said in part one of this whole conversation is yeah, learning is everything that you have said so far. I don't know if anybody's catching this is it's evolving, right? It's in constant motion.
Mhm.
um, One of the things I always do is when I'm at a moment where I know somebody at a personal level who I'm teaching with or we're on a team or whatever, where they are more than not complaining. I just asked a simple question. I mean, do you really see yourself doing this for the next 20 years then? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're wrong, I'm right. I'm like,
Yeah.
do you really want to get up every day and like, beat your head against the wall? And I actually made that choice myself. I mean, I tried to get
Yeah.
out of this system and then, and things happened. And so I really like the way that you put that out there like
And a
that.
lot of those are what I call P&P employees.
Hmm.
They're here for a paycheck until they get a pension,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
it's like that's their motivation. Look, and if that's your motivation, then you also have to know that too. It's like,
Yeah.
if that's what you're here for, then yeah, you don't want to be disrupted because every time someone like me or you or Allie come in with a disruptive idea, you know what they have to do? Change their lesson plans.
You have to change. Yeah.
Work.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's like, no, I've already got my lesson plans. I pull them out, I teach them, I put them back up.
Hmm.
But I would also say, Peter, to your comment, like then the people who are listening who may struggle with the disruption and ego,
Hmm.
like it's a really fine line to walk. And we need to be gracious and give ourselves some grace there because ambition, it's a fine line between ambition and pride. It's a really
Hmm.
fine line. We want to be ambitious and do things for the sake of doing good, but you also take a lot of pride in your work. And it's fine to take pride in your work. But when someone says, Jason, I appreciate your idea, I appreciate you thinking out of the box, but that's just not a good solution. Like, do I take that personally? And so
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard to push in, or it's easy to kind of degrade or acquiesce from ambition into pride,
Hmm.
especially when you're trying to disrupt things for the sake of the outcome. But when people don't like your idea, you pull back. And it's really easy to either make your work an idol,
Hmm.
IDOL.
Hmm.
But guess what happens when you make your work an idol, IDOL, and people don't buy in? It you get frustrated and you begin to become idle, IDLE in your
Hmm.
work.
Right.
So when you make your work an idol, then and people push back, then you're like, well, why am I working so daggum hard? Why am
Hmm.
I trying so much? Why am I trying to be creative? I'll be the teacher who sits here and just does the same thing every year. And so it's that constant vacillation of back and forth between idolatry and idleness
Right.
in your work and pride and ambition. It's a really fine line to walk. So when we do overstep,
Hmm.
that's why you need relationships to say, hey, Peter, man, I'm so sorry. Like I was trying to do good and I got emotional and I'm sorry. Like, my heart. And they're like, yeah, man, I know, I got it. Like that's being an adult, right? And
Hmm.
we need more adults in education.
Right. And I also kind of want to build on that before she's got like 75 questions. She's dying. I love it.
We can
Now,
go part three if you want.
but we're gonna have to go part three. But there is the conversation around that as well is there might be times in within what you just described there where you do play the adult and then the culture of that system that district or whatever is not the one for you. And there's another fine line there because
Mhm.
I've jumped a few districts and I think right now it's prime for people to find their people in education because of the shortages of what's going on in education and that's I think that's a good opportunity to really find your people. I mean, I had a great team the last couple of years, but and the team that I'm in now is it has evolved. I mean, it's to a point to where I'm working with amazing people, and I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. Not to say in past I was, but the I just want to encourage our listeners, like, there is that fine line is if you've been working at something for years and, being an adult and constantly feeling, and this happens in schools as well, continue, but look at other
Yeah,
opportunities out there.
yeah,
So that's great.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk value
Okay.
because you mentioned before we recorded, like, I'm not losing my program. Like, I'm here to stay.
Yeah,
Let's say it like that. I'm
yeah,
just wording it the way I would word it.
I got
yeah.
to swallow my coffee
Just to
there. That
clarify,
was too.
I don't want you to lose your job. But you have, I mean, you've been strategic. Like when I hear
Very.
people say the phrase strategic partnerships, most of the time, honestly, I think it's like hot air. And it's not like you've mentioned like, using the buzzwords just to use them, but your strategy behind the program that you've built, the value around it at all levels. Um, how, talk to us a little bit about that because that in itself is disruptive.
Mhm.
You have your own board. I'm trying to give our listeners, I'm
Mm.
trying to paint this picture of like this is disruption at like a whole other level, whether you
Mm.
know it or not, Jason. I mean, Peter's been having conversations like these for almost 10 years, and I've been with him for 2.5 now, and we've never had a guest like you in
Well,
the
I
classroom,
appreciate that.
doing the work that you're doing.
We're
So
evolving.
a lot of it, and so I guess a lot of it is just is I kind of like to try and think backwards sometimes.
Um,
You what's the outcome I want, and then think backwards. What's the best way to elicit that outcome, or to achieve that outcome, or to arrive at that outcome? And so Perkins requires every CTE person who gets Perkins funding to have an advisory board, right? And so here's just a real quick example of this. All right, so and just tell me like what's the difference in your mind between an advisory board and a board of directors? There's a major difference. And to me, it was I can't recruit an industry alpha to sit on my advisory board because they're going to feel like all they're doing is giving me advice and I'll take it or not, right? You tell me what you want, I'll take it or not. And so it's just the small semantics of changing it and calling it a board of directors. Semantically, is it the same thing? Yeah, it's the same thing. Same meetings, same content, same agenda, but it's me telling them I don't, Peter just said this, I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything. I have to depend on you to do my job. So I want you to tell me, what are you seeing in the industry? What are some employability trends that you're seeing? What are kids not being able to do? And you tell me what you want me to teach. I'm a real big fan of, and I've listened to, like I said, a lot of your podcasts, the topic of durable skills. I like that term. Employable skills, I like that term. I hate the term soft skills. It makes me want to vomit because they're not soft. They're
mhm.
hard to find, to teach, to acquire, and to understand where that term came from. But like Disrupt, Educate podcast listeners, join me in starting the movement to kill the term soft skills. Like take
I
symbols
agree with
around
that.
with you, and when people start doing it, just like bang the symbols in their face and shock them out of that because but that's really what it is. It's just starting, and I appreciate the kind words um but a lot of it is like when you really look at a lot of things I've done, it if we really be honest, I'd love to take credit for all these things. It's really just backwards thinking.
Mhm.
What do I want? How do I get there? I wanted more buy-in from industry. Well, okay, how do I get there? I need to
Mhm.
tell them and speak their language, which involves numbers and involves economic impact. If I really want people to value my program, I need to get the people who move the needle in my community to value my program and let them multiply my marketing efforts, let them multiply these conversations. So that I'll lead you to the place. All right, so who are the alphas who can do that? And you begin recruiting one, two, three. And so people who are listening and they're like, man, it's just this program so big. And man, when I started, I had 43 applications, paper applications on my desk.
Mhm.
And the first semester we had 52 students. And then the next spring we had 128 students. You just got to start small. Like you don't have to build this massive program overnight. And maybe you don't want a massive program. Maybe you want a smaller program that has a little bit more of a hands-on approach. That's the downside of having a massive program like I do is sometimes I don't get to be hands-on with students like I really, really want to be. So
Mhm.
I guess it just depends on what program you want. But I needed industry to come in and support. And there's a big difference and this is going to sound bad, but you know what? I know my platform here with you guys. So I didn't want an advisory board filled with teachers.
Yeah.
I wanted a board of directors filled with industry alphas. And I had to go out and build that. So how do you do that? Start small. Get one person, whether it's the official person who has all the authority in your community, or it's the unofficial person who's doing everything behind the scenes. Find one person to champion your program, get them on board, and then leverage that relationship with somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And then in 2 or 3 years, you've got a really dynamic board who is fighting for you. So if
Mhm.
budgets do get cut, and the school system saying, "Oh, we need to look at this budget. This guy's on extended year and extended day. We need to cut some funds." Like when I hear that, and I haven't yet, but when I do hear that, I'm not going to my superintendent. I'm calling the mayor and the county
Mhm.
commissioner and saying, "Hey, I'm sending you this coming to the pipe. I need you to go fight for me." And now, why do they want to do that? Because they know that every semester, every fall, I'm putting about 180 kids in the workforce. Every spring, I'm putting about 270 to 300 students in the workforce. And so, just a couple quick numbers. Um, Last year, 2023-24, in the fall, had a total of 61,000 hours worked. In the spring, 105,000 hours worked, which totaled for the fall $688,000 of raw wages. In the spring, $1.192 million of raw wages for a total economic impact of $1.88 million. So
Mhm.
I can now go to the industry and say, look, I'm a teacher. Do I feel comfortable help managing that much? I mean, it's not my skill set, but I can
Mhm.
do it. But I can go to the mayor and say, I need, like, you're an expert at this. I need your hands and input. How do we guide and direct that $1.8 million of economic impact? Now it's like, oh, I'm not just coming here for the good of the kids. Like, yeah. It's like, no, no, no. This is part of my job. Like my job is to direct and help and influence economic impact. And so when you start collecting that type of data and then leveraging that type of data and that type of conversation, you're gonna get people who want to be a part of your program. And it's an easy way to appeal to their skill set and just say, I need you. I need the development authority for every time a new company comes in. Because you know what? A lot of the communities are pitching post-secondary talent. But when I took this job, there was no community pitching the value of secondary talent in terms
Mhm.
of recruiting new industry. So when the development authority gets what's called an RFI or request for information, has all of these stats on it on what they want to know, and very very few times, if any, where people they would say, "Hey, we have a high school in this," but it's like it's not just the high school in terms of population, but are you accentuating the talent in your high school? And so that's the first meeting I took was with our development authority and said, "I need to be I need to be a part of these meetings
Mhm.
because I have like my programs are designed to be able to flex in and out of what industry needs. And if we're not producing talent that was responsive to needs of industry, we're not being good stewards of our tax dollars. And so that's kind of where all that came from, like you said, mentioned Ali, the building of the people and why we have these um recruiting those certain types of people, and that's why and again I appreciate that. But if we're really be honest, let's just really be honest. I'm not doing anything that's brain science.
Mhm.
I'm just doing things that I'm trying to be more efficient with,
Right.
and saying, here's the outcome. How do I get there? And then think and plan backwards, and that's kind of where you get to it.
Numbers. I love the I mean that's right now I am we're about to go on our winter break because that's when we're recording this. I have
Hmm.
legitimately like thought about the entire way that we're going to change our marketing due to those numbers. So when you're talking about like the numbers of hours of and then you're putting a dollar amount to it,
Hmm.
you're talking industry lingo, right? It's the
Absolutely.
bottom line, right?
Hmm.
It's funny because a lot of times in education, we do not like to talk about cost of things because we know that it's going to go out to the taxpayer and people are like, well, that's costing how much?
Yeah. Yeah.
But learning how to do that, that is brilliant. And I think about it, we call ours a workforce innovation council. It's a
Hmm.
little bit different play on words. And it was interesting
I love
because
it.
as we were building our assets to spread the word, one of the she's the president of our Chamber of Commerce was great because she was like, change this, move that way down. We don't care about that. Boost productivity is number one.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah, I'd love to work with that
legitimately on
person.
our one pager.
Yeah.
This is so much great knowledge. And that's the other thing that I kind of want to just kind of make a point of is this doesn't just have to be work-based learning. I mean, it
No,
can
yeah.
you can do this in a history
Mm-mm.
course, you can do this in a math course, and that's
Hmm.
the beauty of it. So I just wanted to throw
Yeah,
that in there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You so we this is a master class in disrupting
Yeah, right.
education and work-based learning and just like how to build it. Like, I mean, the work you're doing is incredible. You also have, we haven't even touched on it. You have it's a newer project, the 2152, or
Mhm.
I think that's how you say it,
Yep.
those numbers. But, the goal of that is, just trying to take these types of conversations to the
Yeah.
public forum and bring them out. So, right, like, is that, is that just, I know you say like, okay, educators don't lead with like altruism and, philanthropy and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but in that sense, that project feels like that,
It's
right?
philanthropic. It is. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's
So
a good point is when I say don't lead with philanthropy, I'm not saying philanthropy is bad.
I
Okay.
know.
What I'm
So
saying
I
is
wanted to,
I'm saying it's not an effective way to recruit partners in perpetuity. You get a lot of bites on the hook,
Hmm.
but the line breaks and you leave fish who are not in the boat, right? Like the
Hmm.
purpose of recruiting partners is putting fish in the boat. Um, and so, but no, so here's that happens. A good buddy of mine, Mike Hassler, he's a great follow on LinkedIn, really good friend. We met in at basically during COVID at a virtual conference. I was presenting, he was presenting, and because I presented, they'd give me a pass to go in all the other rooms, and I was like, this looks good. So I watched his, and he was doing something on LinkedIn, and I tried working on LinkedIn. And it was at a time where LinkedIn wasn't friendly to people who were under 18, right? So I had tried that and stopped because it wasn't effective. Well, he had picked up right where I left off and right where they had changed the things. And he was talking about the successes and how Utah like leveraged LinkedIn as part of their portfolio system for Perkins funding. And I was like, man, I gotta get with this guy. So we talked and found out that both he and I were people who were disrupting locally and kind of making waves. And obviously we're under contract with our school systems. And then people were calling and saying, hey, can we, how are you doing this? And so that's why I put all my resources again on my school's website. It's all on LinkedIn. But some people are like, no, 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 we want to pay you. I'm like, I'm like, no, no, it's for free. Allie, it's for free. You don't have to pay me. It's on my website. No, no, no. We want to pay you to come and build it for us and to teach us and train us. And so I was like, you know what? So I started this little consulting company where I kind of go out and help schools do that in the summer or evening courses when I'm not on contract with the school. Um, but then he and I had this conversation because he's very similar, does a lot of the same work. They're very similar, and we're like, but what about the schools who can't afford to bring in people like me or you or Peter or Allie to come in and help change the culture? What do we what I mean? And so we said, well, why don't we take these siloed conversations that are really private and I would feel a lot better about myself if I were taking these conversations and putting them on a public platform. So his office and my office are 2,152 miles apart. That's where the name comes from. And it's trying to show that it's a crowdsourced professional development platform. And we take input from people who leave us comments and say, hey, what about this? So we're in the middle of it's a really long series. It's only 3 episodes, but we took 6 months off because of our semester off because of Hurricane Helene. But we're going to finish that one on work-based learning and special education. Like that. We got some feedback on the need for that, and so we've had some guests come in um, so yeah, it's just a project that we do. It's real niche, and again, it's not monetized. It's we don't have ads. All the money comes out of our pocket to host it and the stuff. But it's just something one I love doing. I love having these conversations. But two, I want to make that stuff available for people
Hmm.
whose system can't afford for them to go to a ACT Vision conference. I mean, it's a great conference, phenomenal. But I mean, it can be expensive by the time you fly and hotel and meals and conference fee. What about the schools? And it tends to be kind of, I don't want to get emotional here, but it tends to be the schools that have the least resources that have the biggest needs in these areas, right?
Hmm.
Like they need people like us telling them, here's how you can make yourself more effective. You can be more places at one time. And it's typically those schools that have the more underrepresented and I won't say disenfranchised, but the students who have more typical barriers to success. And so what we're really doing is we're creating this chasm of again the haves and the have-nots. And so that's what that platform was. So me saying don't pitch philanthropy does not mean I don't see the value in philanthropy. I really do like contributing and doing things and giving
Hmm.
things away. And it's kind of I forget who said it, but there's like a rising tide floats all ships, right?
Hmm.
If we can all get in and contribute, then the tide's going to make everybody better. And there's an element of wanting to be recognized for that, but a lot of it is just we don't need that. We just want to get out there and just say, if someone has to be the face of the message, and it doesn't make I'm not always comfortable doing that because people again they misconstrue your motives, but it's like It doesn't matter. Like someone's into the face, but the purpose is the message getting out? Are
Mhm.
these things being platformed and archived in perpetuity for people to come back to and look time after time after time whenever they want to? And the answer is, it's Disrupt Education. It's, Sylvester Chisholm's, CTE, podcast. It's a 2152 project. It's, Dr. TJ various things. Like these are all free open source where we're trying to say, look, we've gone through it. We're putting this out here so everyone can be good at this. So everyone can get better at this. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And
Mhm.
it's a fun podcast, fun little project, and we're going to pick back up after Christmas. My community is finally healing from Helene, and we're kind of ready to start that again.
The your legacy, what you want as your legacy is very clear. And I really appreciate that. I think Allie and I have had a lot of conversations around, what do we want to bring and how do we want to help, right? And
Yeah,
that was just beautifully put. I kind of want to touch on the philanthropy piece because
sure.
just to kind of like understand as a work-based learning coordinator, an internship coordinator, we've gotten caught where, yeah, we got a great hook, and then you are exactly right. So I just kind of want to reiterate that the difference between what you're talking about is like people feel good about helping high schoolers or the school or
Mhm.
whatever, but when it comes to go time to get out of the water, if you will, it really doesn't happen. And my colleague and I, Brett and I, are really figuring out, and just by you saying it actually legitimizes that how we should approach things differently because we've had maybe five or six really good leads. And once that happens, it was pitched as, hey, you're helping out rather
Mhm.
than there's some real value here. So I just want
Right.
to like
Yeah.
just say yes on that
Yes.
because that is absolutely right on. And that's definitely going to help our listeners as they're working with
But
people.
you should see the looks on people's face when I say that. They look at me like
I
I'm the
know.
spawn of Satan. They're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
philanthropy's bad. I'm like, no, philanthropy's good, but it can't be the main pitch. It can
Yeah.
be these kids are going to make you more profitable. They're going to give you such an advantage in terms of access to talent over your competitors. And oh, by the way, you're also helping them.
Hmm.
But
Right.
that can't be what you lead with because that's when they're gonna I mean, you'll get a lot of people again to bite the hook, but there's a lot of breakage. There's no
Sure.
follow through with philanthropy. It's not sustainable.
Right.
You've got to go in and pitch value numbers
Hmm.
and because that they crunch numbers all day long.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, philanthropy isn't profitable.
Right.
And so you've got to find a way to say, okay, philanthropy is a part of it, but there's a profitable structure to this model. And that's where
Mhm.
people really begin to buy in and you see that sustained follow through
Everybody's going to say to an entrepreneur, I'm going to buy your product because it's awesome. And then they
until
never
it's
do.
time to cut the
Right.
check, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Bring your credit card out and put a, so
Yeah.
that's brilliant. I like that. Allie, we are through so much great information. You're right. This is a masterclass. I mean, it really is. And to your point, Jason, like the amount of expertise that you're sharing here is worth millions. But it's your legacy, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I'm very humbled to, have you on and talking about this. I have a feeling that we're going to be working together in some different ways as
Oh, I'm
well because
excited too.
we're aligned in the same kind of way that we want to build legacy. But Allie, this is going to be a tough question for you now. Your final thoughts on part one and two.
I was
And I
inspired
have a book written here, so I don't know.
at some point. Like I'm inspired by a lot, but I was gonna bring it into the chemistry science realm because just to take a different angle for those who are listening who are like, this doesn't make sense. I can't see myself doing it, and I know how fiery science and math teachers can be, with change and
Yep.
they like their theories and their theorems and they just want things to remain the same, you know. Um, they'll be in this inertia, so to speak. And I was as you were talking, Jason, it's like it's so interesting because the science words that we would use is entropic versus enthalpic. And like it doesn't matter if you most people have heard of entropy, but enthalpy, they're kind of like, what? But here's the thing. You're disrupting by like, putting seemingly chaos into the system by wanting to change it. But you're doing it in a really, it's actually an enthalpic way. It is organized and strategic and it's benefiting everybody. You're actually reducing the chaos in schools by providing so much more opportunity for the community. And I remember when we had Sylvester on the podcast, and like we'll link that episode
Yeah,
here,
Sylvester Chisholm. Yeah.
Sylvester
Yeah,
Chisholm,
great.
because I still go back to that conversation all the time. And one of the things that he said was, you know, can you picture your students being part of building a house in your community and then 10 years later living in it?
Mm.
And it was like, you can't put a price tag. Well, you can, but you really can't put an actual price tag on the value of investing in your community. And everything that you just talked about is like transformational at the community level,
Hmm.
and the energy input in that system is like, so I just want to encourage like educators and leaders and anybody listening to this podcast, like you can be entropic and enthalpic and you can literally go nuclear, so to speak. I'm throwing all the science terms here for those people who need to hear it in a different way to disrupt education.
Hmm.
And I love everything you're doing. I love that you gave the big picture and was like, and look, you can do it. You can start small,
Yeah.
like both. And I think you're really gonna help so many people listening to this. Anybody listening needs to share this out. Like if you're in education at all, tag 5 people, comment,
Yeah.
share it with 5 people, even if you just share it with one. But like seriously, 5 people that need to hear this podcast. Share it with them, because part one and part two are fire. This series, I mean, we might. I'm just saying, Jason. I don't know the order. This probably is going to have to end the series. Like I don't know when we're going to end it. I want to
I
put it out,
agree.
but I also like we might just have to be like, okay, well, we're starting the series part two, because this is just such a place to end it that I don't know where we would go from here.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Thank you.
We'll go in the summer.
It is. People are gonna have to. How can they connect?
Yeah.
And we didn't even do
Yeah. How
that.
how can
Yeah.
people connect with you, Jason? What are the best ways? Obviously, LinkedIn.
That's
We'll put
it.
that
That's the
here.
only social media I have.
Yeah.
That's it. It is LinkedIn, and last name is VAN space NUS.
Hmm.
And it look, just like my profile, bald, have a little bow tie. So yeah, that's it. And again, it's just um, encourage people to just champion students and break the stigma that students can't solve the labor shortage in our communities. They can. There's nothing keeping them from doing that. Be unapologetic in our attempt to ring that bell. And that's kind of what I want that legacy to be, is I want to change the world, but the world's a big place. So if we can all change our communities, then we can all take that synergistic effort to change the world, and really, really put students in a position to succeed, especially those students who may have a ton of obstacles and barriers in their way. Like career tech ed, like they don't care. Like employers don't care. Like they want people who can do the work. And that's what it's about, is preparing to do the work. And the things you guys are doing on your podcast are great. And I will say one last thing, Allie, you've said this twice. And so I'll share something that I read in a book and forgot about until I heard Kevin Fleming say it on a podcast a couple years ago, or maybe about a year ago. But it's Jim Collins wrote it. It's a book called Good to Great. And he talks about um, the the tyranny of the or and the genius of the and. And it's like you either have to be career tech or academic. And I hope I'm saying that right. I'm pretty sure it's in Good to Great, the Jim Collins book. But think about what that is for us. Kind of, our schools it's all about, you have to be AP chemistry, or you have to be in or this and then go. Why can't I've placed AP chemistry students at a local chemical plant as wet lab apprentices. Like it's not like the tyranny of the or. You're forcing kids into one model versus saying, but the genius is in the and. You can do AP chemistry and engineering,
Yeah.
AP chemistry and architecture. Like that's what we want to be. Let's be the geniuses of and not the tyrannical people of the or. Like that's where we need to kind of build from. That's the epistemology that we can build from in there. So yeah.
And changes lives. And I think we've seen it honestly as educators when you open up another additional piece to learning for students. Wonderfully put. Thank you so much. I mean, I can't like I'm gonna go into tomorrow and I will probably be like just staring off and my students will be like, "What are you thinking about?" I'm like, "Well, here's the podcast that y'all need to listen
Yeah,
to."
well, man,
Brilliant,
thank you all
brilliant
very much.
information.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, Jason. Really
It was a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
It was a pleasure.
I'm gonna call you Allie Oppenheimer Dahl now. With you dropped the
Nuclear.
the fission, the nuclearness of that. No, all right, so I just watched it again, so that's probably why. Anyway, so for Allie Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Round 2 of this amazing 2-part series. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Please do connect with Jason. Amazing stuff. I cannot wait to see where 2152 goes. Hopefully, we have a chance to participate as well. For all of us here at the Disrupt Education Podcast, we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out and being our listeners. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.